Hi, everybody. Welcome to the International Water Resources Association webinar on smart water management, looking at current water challenges around the world. We're really happy to have you here today, and we have a really great panel, including some people who are up very early to join us. And so we are going to get started in just 1 or 2 minutes. So go ahead and take the opportunity to get a last glass of water or get your pen and paper and get ready to take some notes. And we will get started in just 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Jim. Hi, Mary. I just thought I'd scramble and borrow a webcam. Yeah. I never used it before. Yeah, no idea. This works.
It's a good webcam, very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just borrowed it. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Oh, welcome to the current age.
Smart technology, right?
Smart technology, yeah. Sometimes I wish I were dumb again.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I was kind of scrambling earlier. So you were still talking about this question, right? I mean, question of the year, is smart water technology a smart idea?
I think we've already started the webinar.
Yeah, we got the question and everything. We're just waiting 1 or 2 more minutes for everyone to join us, to give people just a second who are running a little late a chance to join. But we will be getting started here in just 1 or 2 minutes. But we got the question and everything, and I think we're excited to kind of address the IWRA's question of the year, and sort of give our audience an opportunity to kind of think through those questions and then to be able to go onto the website and respond and engage, and then perhaps also engage on our LinkedIn webpage, social media and everything. It's a good question to think over, everyone. You know, is smart water management really a smart idea? And all the different permutations I think that come from that, about how to improve smart water management, how it can be addressed to really be implemented. So that's really the kind of questions we're going to engage today, I think.
Okay.
I hope that's the promise.
Can you remind me of the so like the sequence? I mean, who's going to first, second, third, and fourth? Yeah.
Yes,
I know Jim. Oh, Jim is going to go first.
Jim is first. He's number 1.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. And then who's second?
Mary's number 2.
Number 2, and I'm
Dr. Trudeau's number 2.
Oh, okay.
You are number 3.
I'm number 3. Oh, okay. And Henning is number 4.
Henning is number 4. Okay. There we go. Me, I'm kind of out of number. All right, I think it's been long enough. Anyone who's running a little late will hopefully join us in a second. But I'd like to welcome everybody to the International Water Resources Association webinar on smart water management, current water challenges around the water world. Our panelists today, we were just discussing, is Professor James Nickum, Editor-in-Chief of Water International, Dr. Mary Trudeau, IWRA Water Security Project Officer, Professor Frederick Lee, Executive Director of the Center for Water Technology and Policy at Hong Kong University, and Professor Henning Bjornlund, Professor in Water Policy Management, University of South Australia, and an IWRA board member of longstanding. This is a webinar hosted by the International Water Resources Association. The IWRA is an international network of researchers and practitioners who work on multidisciplinary range of water resource issues. We are a nonprofit, non-governmental educational organization. The IWRA provides a global knowledge-based forum for bridging disciplines and geographies by connecting professionals, students, individuals, corporations, and institutions who are concerned with the sustainable use of the world's water resources. So if that sounds like your interest, you should go to our webpage, www.iwra.org, and check out being a member so you can join us and receive all the great benefits of membership and support us in our work. We're really happy to have you here today. So thanks for tuning in. We have a really great panel. both practitioners and researchers, people who have been active in the field for a long time, and people who were particularly active in our Smart Water Management Task Force, who just produced a report, which you can find on our website, www.iwra.org. They're going to present some of their research for us here today. So today our panel will talk about how the information and communication technology and real-time data and responses are an integral part of the solution for all of our water management challenges, and that comes in many different places geographically and different types of challenges, as we'll discuss here today. The area of smart water management, as I'm sure many of you are tuning in know already, is really increasing the interest from both governments, but also from non-governmental actors as well. People who are looking to bring the areas of technology into how they address water challenges in urban or regional or national strategies. So the potential application of these smart water systems in water management, it covers a lot of different areas, including quality, water quantity, irrigation, leak detection, which is very important, as well as looking at floods and droughts. So there's a lot of different places we can deploy this, but we need to kind of look at how to sort of push it forward, how it can be improved, and how its deployment can be streamlined and maintained. So that's how our water panel is going, or our webinar panel today is going to look at these questions. And as I suggested earlier in the webinar, if you were just tuning in at the beginning, we're going to be looking also, this is the question of the year. The IWRA's question of the year is around smart water management. Is smart water management really a smart idea? So you can go again to our website or to our or you can go to our website or to www.iwra.org/question-of-the-year, and yeah, it's a good website, and then you can participate and send those questions in and respond to that there. So also, we're going to, of course, follow up and put this all on our LinkedIn webpage because we love social media. So feel free to add us on LinkedIn, follow us, and to participate there, or you can tweet at us as well. So I know a lot of you have already tuned into our webinars before, but let me just briefly cover the format of today's webinar. To start, each of our panelists are going to cover a short presentation, about 10 minutes long, and then we're going to have questions from the audience at the end. So if there's a question that you have and you want to pose it to our panel, feel free. You'll see there on your GoToWebinar control panel, it says questions. It's about halfway down. You can just type that, I'll see it, and then I will relay it to our panel. So if you think of a question, just even in the first minutes, go ahead and type it. You'll be on the top of the list, and then we'll try to work our way through the questions and hopefully have time for everybody, but I don't always promise that. And again, if your question is very particular, focused around maybe one slide or two questions or something that you hear from one of our panelists, go ahead and reach out to them. They're very friendly people, I promise. And just go ahead and pose your question to them directly, especially if it's a technical nature. And so, we'll try to focus on questions that sort of cover the broad range and provide a platform for people to kind of discuss and think through things. So like I say, if you have any questions, just type them in and we'll see them right away, and that's perfect. So with all of that in mind, I'd like to turn the floor over to Professor James Nickum.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you.
You've already covered many of the points that I am ready to make, but let me put them into words. I would like to present an introduction to this panel and give you some background. I actually, as editor-in-chief of Water International, I loathe acronyms, but I thought I'd start this with two of them, IWRA, which is us, and SWM, which is Smart Water Management. Now IWRA became interested in smart water management through a collaboration with the Korean Water Agency, which is called K-Water, that asked us to help them pull together a report of case studies in smart water management. Korea has been a champion of smart water management for over a decade and has become a leader and a model in clearly integrating smart water management into its policies and its infrastructure in a way that is in advance of most countries. So we pulled together this report, 500 pages. You can find it, read it in its entirety or in part at this site, www.iwra.org, SWM-2. And the report discusses the opportunities, challenges, and lessons that we learned from 10 diverse in-depth studies of applying smart water management, together with 9 short cases of smart water management in process. All right, so what is smart water management? Again, our excellent moderator, Scott, has already mentioned this, but here it is in words. It's the application of information and communication technology. That also includes things like IT, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, to provide real-time, automated, often integrated data to address water challenges. And then for those who like IWRM, we toss that in too. So it can operate at a variety of different scales. We found household, city, basin level, national, or even transboundary, rural. Our case studies, and you see down in the map, the ones in the light blue are actually the case studies. The dark blue were the upcoming projects, but they covered a pretty good range of the world, 29 countries, over 40 organizations. They addressed a large number of issues that are some of the key critical issues in water management these days, from water quality to water access, efficient irrigation, leak detection. Leak detection is actually one of the most commonly used. Ecosystem protection, groundwater management, stormwater management, floods and drought prediction, energy optimization, community, and then it also involved community engagement, data sharing and transparency, and governance. So just about the whole ball of wax. Now, it was hard to actually pull lessons out of this, but here's what we came up with as some of the key ones in terms of both enablers and benefits and barriers. So for the enablers, first of all, this stuff is usually expensive. The technologies are expensive, so you need a long-term investment commitment. You need political support. This is something that will not happen if it doesn't have government backing in most cases. But at the same time, you need a two-pronged approach. It cannot be entirely technical. You also need to consider the institutional and various kinds of staffing and training needs that are to make it work. And that includes local stakeholder engagement often and knowledge sharing. It requires working across sectors because these technologies affect everyone, not just sort of the engineering types. And it involves working with traditional infrastructure. You're not going to rip out all of your old infrastructure and rebuild them usually. So you have to integrate these smart tools with what you have. The key barriers to this is, well, you need the investment. So you've got to have the investment, and that can be a problem. In developing countries, there are a lot of problems with unstable electricity or internet connections, and without those, it's very hard to operate. The technologies themselves, they may be today's technologies, but today's technologies are yesterday's technologies tomorrow. So there is a need to continually upgrade, and so if you commit to the wrong technology too soon, you may find a less than optimal situation, and in fact, you may actually lose a lot of costs. And there's a lack of standardization across the technologies, especially given that so much of it is proprietary. And water utilities and governments are often still in an old mindset and quite reluctant to adopt these smart water management technologies. Now, if they're adopted, there are some key benefits. One that was kind of surprising, given that the concern that we have these days that artificial intelligence, the like, are job killers. We found that at least in those where we could identify that there seemed to be job creation. Certainly, like meter readers, no, but the people who actually operate, there's more demand for people to operate these systems. It can increase trust. It can improve decision-making opportunities. You can build capacity and have further educational opportunities. And quite importantly these days is that you can improve your resilience to climate change for some of these. Okay, so what follow-ups? We had this nice report. Well, one of them, this webinar itself, is one of the first follow-ups. We're going to also have a forthcoming issue of the Journal of IWRA, Water International, that will explore smart water management in a wider context, beyond the case studies, to try to, but including some of them, to pull out some of the implications that just gone through. And another one that is one that you can be involved with is our question of the year, 2019. Again, Scott mentioned this. Is smart water management really a smart idea? If not, why not? Or is it smart in some ways, but not in others? And is there any way that it can be made a little bit smarter? And now, here's the place where the question of the year, you can go there and make your contribution. I'll come back to that. We've got 18 responses so far. And I've gone through them and tried to use my editorial skills to distill the essence of them. If you are one of those 18 responders and you think I didn't quite get it right, then I'm sorry about that, but please correct us. But basically everyone thinks, yeah, it's a smart idea. It improves the efficiency. It reduces losses in distribution systems, and at least it can help to upgrade infrastructure, operations, and institutions. The institutions is an interesting one. You can have improved assessment of performance, incentives, revised tariffs. You can monitor contracting, and these are all crying needs in developing countries and utilities. There's disagreement as to whether it is smart in other areas. The jury is out on things like affordability. The jury is out on access. Does smart water management allow a utility to sort of close the boundaries and make the creation between the served and the unserved, the distinction between the served and the unserved, more formidable? There are hesitations as to whether these technologies will invade privacy, whether or not, therefore, they will be acceptable socially. There are questions of that the human resources may have limited capacity, at least for some forms of smart water technologies. Therefore, any smart technology needs to become understandable, cost-effective, easy to use, and sustainable. Well, from our case studies, a lot of them are not really understandable except to technically trained people. They may not even be cost-effective. So this is an area that one needs to explore more. Water administrators are often not really committed to achieving the aims that smart water management are aimed at. Then there's questions as to how it can be applied. There are some really wicked problems out there that may be too much for smart water management to really effectively handle. Transboundary basins is one. Getting access to data with transboundary basins that are shared by different countries, for example, often the countries do not really want to share data. So having improved access and real-time access may be a non-starter. It's also hard for laws, regulations, and institutions to keep pace when you have different governance structures in different countries. Another is concerns that groundwater, which is very hard to monitor, may not be too amenable to smart water management, although one of our case studies was about an attempt to start this, and that smart water management has an urban focus so far, and therefore that farmers may not benefit from it as much. And finally, a concern that smart water management is really a technique, and it cannot answer core questions of priorities and values. Well, that's what we've got so far, only 18 answers. So I'd like you actually to not hesitate and add your voice to the conversation, both in comments for this webinar and in going to www.iwra.org/discussion-topics/question of the year 2019. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. I think that was a really good overview, and I hope that I didn't take too much of your presentation in my introduction, but I think you came up with a lot of really great points, all covered in a quick fashion. I was impressed by how you distilled down the whole subject. Quite good, and I hope that people will take the opportunity to engage us in our question of the year. We're now going to hear from Dr. Trudeau.
Okay, I'm not seeing the share screen. There we go.
There you go. It's hard for me to talk and use the mouse at the same time.
Okay. Okay,
so great.
You can see everything. Okay, so I'm going to be talking specifically about municipal systems, drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. And the basis of the presentation is, one, my experience as a manager of municipal operations, and also two of the reports that Jim mentioned, two of the case studies within the report that Jim mentioned, one from Paris, France for wastewater, and one in Toronto, Canada for stormwater. So Jim has mentioned the definition in the report. The thing is, it's also done smart water management. It has to be done within an integrated water resources management context. So IWRM is very, very poorly defined. It means different things in different contexts. What are you integrating specifically, and how much of your water resources? But conceptually, it means that smart water management is done within a broader plan. It can be used for planning and operational purposes. So it's certainly the real-time approach, but it can also be used, for example, to plan 20 years in advance. You know, what will the distribution network be performing like under increased flow conditions, that kind of thing. So there's a number of key assertions about smart water management being, improving efficiency, making water management more reliable, helping with decision making, and knowledge sharing and collaboration. All of these things are possible, but it's important to know that these benefits aren't automatic with stormwater, with smart water management. So just to situate, is this blocking? Can you see the full screen, or is this little chat thing blocking the part of the screen?
No, you look fine.
It's okay. Okay,
it hides it. But we do see your pointer, so you can use the pointer.
Okay, so so I'm in the city of Ottawa, which is up in Ontario, Canada, and we have the Ottawa River to the north. We've got 2 water purification plants, which are upstream of the wastewater treatment plant. And I'm just going to briefly mention this one facility, the Fleet Street Pumping Station, So this was Ottawa's first water distribution infrastructure. It was built in 1874 in response to a massive fire. It's got 6 turbines that run on water that's diverted from the Ottawa River, and it's still used today. It's used to pressurize, those 6 turbines pressurize 6 pumps that distribute drinking water. And for almost 100 years, this facility had operators 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in 1998, when my staff and I were responsible for this facility, we automated it. So I guess the bottom line here is that automation isn't only for new or modern infrastructure. It certainly can be applied to existing infrastructure. And that's certainly also the case in Paris, where the sanitation system in the greater Paris region, one of the case studies in the report, has a smart water management approach. So this little graphic here shows the mega city of Paris, and the green dots are the 6 wastewater treatment facilities within that public utility system. So this is a massive system. It's 1,800 square kilometers, 9 million people, and 284 municipalities. One of the greatest challenges for the wastewater system was to recover water quality in the Seine and the Marne rivers. So this is in response to a water framework directive requirement to meet water quality parameters. So there were a number of issues: treatment capacity, technical performance, combined sewer overflows, all contributed to problems in meeting that those water quality objectives. So there was a system evolution. Real-time control started with the 1997 Sanitation Master Plan. And there's been incredible infrastructure investment, infrastructure built to both store and pump wastewater to treatment plants with available capacity as weather moves through. So normally a storm will track, let's say, from east to west over a municipality. And so what the system can do is gauge as, say, the east end facilities are reaching their capacity, the wastewater can be shunted to the western facilities. And all of this is done in real time. So that system has both control and forecast systems with hydrologic and hydraulic numerical modeling. They're fed by continuous sewer network monitoring as well as radar imaging. And there's also a non-real-time mode for scenarios. So for example, for planning, for learning from past conditions. So if there's been a flooding incident, how could they possibly maybe have managed the system differently? And also for training. What's interesting though is the success factors. One of the key factors is the shared vision. So Jim mentioned this, the shared vision among the leaders was to merge the various systems, not try to integrate. So with all of the various operators, municipalities and jurisdictions, they didn't want to have one homogeneous culture, if you want, but they did have a commitment to a common technical culture. So there was some slight resistance at first of the operators because they perceived that they would be losing some of their autonomy to operate the system with this centralized system coming in. But they quickly realized that they actually had more access to information outside of their regular management scope. And also regular meetings of the plant and network operators are continuing to help reinforce and build this common technical infrastructure or common technical culture. This system is continuing to evolve. They have future plans to transition from flow management basis to a pollutant load basis. So it just reinforces this idea of smart water management within a long-term vision and with a commitment to continuous improvement. Once it's started, it just simply isn't the end. As Jim mentioned, the technologies change, the governance expectations may change. So it's not a one-time project. It's an ongoing commitment. The Toronto stormwater system, and again, I would invite you to read the case study in the report. Kevin Mercer and Christine Tolton were the authors. So this is a real-time system in that it gathers weather intelligence and it predicts how much rainfall will flow from the roof systems into rain barrels on private property. So this system is fundamentally different in terms of combining private property infrastructure with the public system. So on private property, there's the rain barrels and technologies, for example, control valves to control where the water from the rain barrel is used. It can be used within the household. It can be used on the lawns, for example, outdoor gardens, or it can be transferred into the public system after the rainstorm has passed. So the key challenge for this system was not the technology. So again, it's not about smart water technology and overcoming those challenges. The key challenge here was the business model to achieve economies of scale to gain participation by the household. So at least 40% of households have to participate in the system for there to be any noticeable change in the flows through the stormwater system, through the public stormwater system. And so just the cost to the homeowner and the participation of the homeowner emptying out the rain barrels, those kinds of things are actually the key challenges, not the technology itself. So in terms of lessons and limitations, smart water systems don't begin with the technology. They really begin with a vision and a planning. They take a long-term commitment, and as Jim mentioned also, that includes the budgeting for this application, and also an expectation that there will be building through continuous improvement, which requires some flexibility, refinement, and possibly reimagining how that system will work in the future. Human resources, as always, are essential. Engaging operators, for example, ensuring that they have capacity that they can develop through training, that they accept the technology, and if the technology is shared, if the system is shared with the public, then clearly there's a whole outreach requirement. Building relationships among the operators, the management, the technology providers, knowledge sharing, all of these things are essential. And also the individual context. So what are the natural conditions, water quality and quantity, governance, policy drivers, for example, the Water Framework Directive in Europe is key. What are the infrastructure conditions? And in the end, technology will only get us so far when it comes to managing water. Clearly, it doesn't create water. We may be able to reuse water in a smarter way, refine the water that the uses, but the smart water management won't help in terms of water shortages, for example, within the water. So we really need the watershed and aquifer level management, integrated water resource management. We have to start matching quality to use to address some of these broader challenges. For example, certainly in Canada, I think Europe and in the United States, we're flushing toilets with drinking water quality water. A greater emphasis on circular economy, recovering nutrients, for example, from wastewater is something that we need to do to address phosphorus issues. And climate change, municipal urban infrastructure has not respected the water cycle. It hasn't really taken on board that what goes into the water cycle comes back as part of that. And so it's acknowledging that whole cycle is changing, and it requires an attitudinal shift in terms of really respecting what the water cycle needs for its own balance. So this is a link again to that report, and I would invite you to read those two case studies. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that presentation. And I really enjoyed one of the things that you brought up was the tension between sort of a homogeneous centralized command, but then also having sort of a heterogeneous culture and the ability to sort of makes some level of decisions based on different areas, even within one giant metro and one broader system. I thought that was a really interesting kind of tension to sort of play out as we sort of look at questions around how to make things more efficient, how to make choices between centralized command or having more on the ground decentralized decision making. So I like that. Thank you. Our next presentation will come from Professor Frederick Lee. Dr. Lee, I'm going to make you the panelist. There you go, the presenter. And there you go. You are on mute, I believe, so you want to unmute yourself before you speak.
Oh, hi. I'm so sorry. Okay. Can you see it, or can you see my screen?
Yes, just make it large.
Make it large. And I thought I did it already.
So
Let me
the
see.
whole screen.
Is it?
There we go.
Okay. The thing is that now that I make it large, I cannot see you guys. Can I
Okay.
do both?
I mean, I know we're nice to it's good to.
Is there a way that I can also see you guys at the same time?
It's okay. Just go ahead and present right to the computer, and it won't be a problem.
Is it working now?
No, you made the screen smaller again.
Oh, okay. So
Make it large. Yeah.
like this.
Like that. Perfect. And
Okay.
then we're still here. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay, so you can see me, right? Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, this is the a project that we organized or actually are conducting at the Center for Water Technology and Policy for the Hong Kong government, specifically the Water Supplies Department in Hong Kong. Let me see, hold on a second. Oops. Can you give me just 1 minute, okay? Yeah, quick.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a reminder to all of everyone in the audience, you can take this opportunity to reflect on some questions. If you want to pose some questions to us, just go ahead and type them in the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel over there on the right side of your screen. We'll see them right away. I see there's already a couple of questions posed, and they look great. So we're excited to get them.
Okay.
All right.
Now okay. Now, first of all, let me introduce myself. I forgot. I work at the University of Hong Kong, and I'm the executive director for the Center for Water Technology and Policy. Now, this center is unique in the sense that it's an interfaculty collaboration between the Faculty of Engineering and the Faculty of Social Sciences, and we focus on policy technology interface issues. So it's not simply technology, it's not just policy. We have to define our research project from a policy technology interface angle. Okay. Now for this project, which was entitled Smart Water Auditing Project, we started the project with research. We were looking at domestic water use, specifically the composition of water use in the domestic sector. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that this is a figure of the composition of water use in Singapore for the year 2016-2017, and you can see that in the case of Singapore, more than a quarter of the water is used for showering, like 27%, and then 18% for flushing. Okay, and then the next item, the third most, the top third, okay, use is the kitchen, okay, 16%, and then 15% for laundry. And then we look at the case of Hong Kong, we say, hey, when do we have similar kind of data? And turns out that we don't really have that good data, okay? Now, this is a summary of the data, oops, no, okay. This is for Gold Coast, Singapore, Auckland, the United States, and Hong Kong. Now, the Hong Kong data, okay, was based on a household survey conducted in the year 2011. So it's based on survey. Basically, the participants were asked to use a logbook, okay, to record, okay, how much, basically it's like what they guess, okay, is how much time they spend, okay, in a shower. And then those data then were converted into a percentage distribution of water use at a household. Now you can see that according to this 2011 survey, 43% of the household use, water use at a household level were used for flushing. That is definitely way out of line, okay? Like in the United States, it's 24%. In Auckland is 19%, Singapore 18%, Gold Coast is 13%. So definitely this is an overestimation in terms of water use for flushing. So basically what we are arguing is that there's a lack of valid domestic water use data in the case of Hong Kong. And so we propose to the water agency that we can conduct a project that help them close this gap in data, okay? And we make the argument that first, we need to collect data on domestic water use pattern in Hong Kong. Now, this is very important. It's not simply like data. You have to emphasize that it's new data because the water agency has not collected data at this fine grain level. What I mean by this is that we are talking about new data made possible by the availability of new technology. So instead of, at the moment, households are receiving their water bill once every 4 months. With this technology, okay, the application of IoT, AI, machine learning, then we can basically give daily water use data to the water users. So that's very important. So we are talking about new data. So instead of like a water bill given to the households once every 4 months, we can actually give data, okay, on the past 24 hours to the water users. Secondly, it's new data, not simply on the total amount of water used, but on the composition of daily water use at a household level. And that's new. And I think if we can, if we finish this, what we call the smart water auditing system, it will be the first of its kind in the world at that level. I mean, in terms of the, how should I say that, the detail, okay, that we can generate. The second objective of the project is to provide feedback on water use consumption, to empower water users to experiment with, and also in a way, okay, to reinforce positive water conservation measures. But the idea is that based on the premise that a timely feedback will help reinforce positive water conservation behavior. Okay, so now not until we get the data, we actually look at like a 3 months or 4 months or half a year water use consumption data, we cannot really say for sure, okay, this hypothesis holds, okay. And then number 3, this project will help the water agency to conduct policy evaluation, particularly on water conservation measures. The whole idea is that with data, then they can actually see whether or not water conservation measures that they're going to introduce will actually produce the desired outcome. Okay, so with this system put in place, they can actually collect data, okay, basically on a minute-to-minute basis, and then they can actually measure, they can actually evaluate the success or not success, okay, the impact, okay, the impact of their water conservation measures. Yeah. Number 4, with the data that we're going to collect in regard to water use at a household level, then we can actually help optimize the investment in the infrastructure, okay, in the water supply infrastructure in Hong Kong. Yeah, at the moment, the standard for building the water distribution system derived from the UK system. Basically, we borrow the UK standard and apply the UK standard, United Kingdom standard, okay, to designing the water supply infrastructure here in Hong Kong. Yeah, and I think the argument here is that the standard developed in the UK may not be fully applicable to Hong Kong situation. So with this kind of data that we're going to generate, okay, in regard to water use at a household scale, then we can come up with some more realistic data to design or to rethink the standard for designing the water supply system in Hong Kong. I think one hypothesis that right now the water supply system may be over-designed. So if we can come up with a more realistic design standard, that will help bring about some savings, okay, in the investment in building the infrastructure for the Hong Kong water supply system. Yeah. Now, this is a schematic illustration of the smart water auditing system that we're trying to create through this research project. So at a household level, these are the kind of water users. And then we have 1 meter. And then the flushing, we have a separate meter. Oh, I need to add, okay, a point, add a remark right here. In the case of Hong Kong, about 85% of the households in Hong Kong are using seawater for flushing since 1953. So we need to use 2 meters, basically with a dual water supply system. Okay, so data collected by the smart meters at each household would then be transmitted through a wireless transmission network to a cloud system, and then the data will be scored and analyzed, and then we'll develop an algorithm to disaggregate the total water use into a composition. I mean, basically to produce, okay, a disaggregated water use, and this disaggregated water use data would be made available for the water users, okay, to look at what they have, whether or not, okay, their water use, they can actually tell, okay, how much water they have used for what purposes in the last 24 hours. Actually, they compare. Okay, right now we're in the design stage. They can actually look at the pattern water use over a 3-day period or a 7-day period. The whole idea is that with this detailed breakdown of water use available to water users, that could help reinforce any positive water conservation behavior that they are going to adopt. Yeah. Now, in order to make this work, okay, we require high resolution water use data. Okay. Now this is basically down to the second, and then in terms of flow, in terms of liter per hour. Yeah. So with this high resolution data, then we can disaggregate, okay, use this machine learning, okay, creating an algorithm to break down the aggregated data in by type of use, okay. So at the end that we can, through this smart water auditing system, okay, that we can tell the user, okay, how much water they've used for showering, for cleaning, and also for flushing, okay. Now, at the moment we are testing different types of smart meter and different types of data transmission devices. Option 1, this is a UK standard meter Ulster. Is a mechanical meter using 3G transmission device. Option number 2, this is a meter made in China, Huizhong, and then they're using NB-IoT. NB-IoT is almost what they claim, like close to 5G. And then option number 3, census data. Census year meter, and this is a bit old, okay, in terms of the data transmission technology. We need to use a drive-by or walk-by, okay, data collection method. Yeah. So at the moment we are testing all 3 types of smart meters, and also we are testing all 3 types of data transmission technologies, and we are going to decide which technology is most appropriate, okay, for Hong Kong setting, which is a high-rise, high-density setting. Yeah. Now, in order to create the algorithm for the pilot study, which we're going to include 30 households, we also need to install tap tap-based flow sensors. So these are the smart meter. Okay, this is a smart meter. So we'll install one smart meter, okay, per household. And then we are also going to install a flush logger, okay, or flush counter, okay, to capture the water use in by the flushing system for flushing purposes, okay. And for each device in the household, we need to install a flow sensor, okay, say for the shower head, in the kitchen, and also for the washing machine, okay. The idea is that we need the tap-based flow sensor to generate data to help calibrate and verify the data collected by the smart water meter. And then the materials well, basically at the moment is plastic or metal, and then connected to external power banks. And then the data collected by the flow sensors will be collected and transmitted through a Wi-Fi network. Yeah. Now this is a prototype of the flow sensor. So basically it's installed under the sink. This is one type. We also at the moment, okay, testing different types of flow sensors that we're going to use for the project. Yeah. So the technical issues, okay, where's a good location to install a smart meter? Because Hong Kong is a high density, high rise environment, this becomes a very difficult issue because the meter rooms are kind of like really packed. It's difficult to find a good spot, okay, to install a smart meter. In addition to the meter that's being used for collection purposes, meaning for building purposes. Second, do we need a letter to certify that the flow sensors and smart water meters comply with the standard for contact with potable water? Now, this is important because in Hong Kong, we have a lead in the water scandal several years ago. So households are very concerned with whether or not, okay, any devices that we're going to put into or connected with the water supply system, okay, would create that kind of like would bring any kind of contaminants, okay, into the water. And then we also need to address this question of risk management. So we need to have like liability insurance policy and also home insurance for all the participants. And number 4, of course, we are concerned with data security and the question of data ownership. So we need to sort out all these technical issues with all the participants and also with the water supply department. Yeah. Research design, we have this question about sampling strategy. What are the constraints posed by the available technologies in terms of sampling? And what are the site constraints? Meaning, because even 5G, okay, 5G is not a perfect technology, and if you're going to use all this wireless transmission technology, then we may not be able to include certain households, okay, in our project. So that may create problems, okay, for us in terms of identifying 500. Now, for the main study, we need to include 500 households through a random sampling process. Yeah. So in terms of data, okay, what is the minimum resolution of data? At the moment, we are collecting data at a 10-second interval. And how we can collect data on seawater use. That may also a problem because seawater is corrosive. So, and the technical question about privacy and cybersecurity. Okay, and number 3, okay, in terms of research design issue, the feedback mechanism, and how frequent should the feedback interval be? And I think we have almost decided not to provide real-time data. It's not particularly useful. Okay, not useful meaning it's not necessary to provide. Unlike a smart meter for electricity use, smart water use meter, you don't. I mean, smart water meter, you don't. Can you imagine people keep checking their smart water? I mean, keep checking the feed mechanism, see how much water is being used at a household. So we thought maybe like 24-hour interval, yeah. And how to provide feedback to the users. So we develop a mobile web page or an app, yeah. So those are the a very quick overview, okay, of what we are doing. We have started the project about 6 months ago, so hopefully about 12 months from now, we should begin to collect data on the 30 households in the pilot phase, and then we can begin to see whether or not, okay, the system is going to work. Okay, I'll stop here. Yeah.
That was a great presentation, and I really enjoyed that you were able to sort of highlight the need for really good data. I mean, at the base of all this, you know, at the bottom of smart water technology is that you need to be driven by data. So if you don't have the data, you won't be smart. So it has to have good data collection, it has to have good methods, and you can't just apply the data from one city to another city and say, oh, that works. No, you have to have the data specific to the area. I thought that was really important to highlight. All right, we're going to go on to our last presenter, Professor Bjornlund, Henning, and just to remind everyone, go ahead and post some questions, and so that we are ready for the question time. The question box is right on the right side of your GoToWebinar control panel, about halfway down. And so please go ahead and just type in your questions. We'll see them and we'll get to them right away as soon as we are done with the presentations. So, Henning, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott. In the interest of time, I will get started talking while you fiddle with the technology. As the previous presentation highlight, most attention to smart water management have been on urban issues. This presentation changes that to small-scale irrigation. And it's based on one of the case studies in the K-Water report. You can read all about it there. So what this paper will be about is that I will use a project we have conducted in small-scale irrigation schemes in Zimbabwe, Tanzania, and Mozambique to highlight what we call the combined use of smart technologies with smart institutions. So small-scale irrigation has been clearly canvassed as a major opportunity to improve livelihoods and food security throughout developing countries. However, small-scale irrigation have failed to deliver largely, and particularly in rural and remote Africa. So there was a reluctance to invest in the 80s and 90s, and now the World Bank and other donors are really talking about upscaling their investments again. So really, we ought to ask the question, how do we prevent a repeat of past failures? And we argue that that's not just an issue of technology, it's not just an issue of pouring more concrete. There are other more soft issues that need to be addressed. We basically need a change of mindset, both among farmers, leaders, and politicians, to think about farmers backwards, subsistence-based, to farmers as a business model. Farmers being in business, farmers making money, not just producing something to eat. To achieve that, we need to integrate farmers into the value chain, and we need to use smart water management technologies and institutions. So our project, which is called TISA, Transforming Irrigation in Sub-Saharan Africa, is basically, as Jim also mentioned, a two-pronged approach. We combine the introduction of smart technologies with the introduction of smart institutions to ensure that the smart technologies achieve their objectives. So this project is also unique in the sense that these smart tools are actually put in the hand of farmers, not academics, not technicians, not engineers, but farmers, often with very low level of schooling, but nevertheless smart farmers. At the same time, they are supposed to provide the basis for in-time data collection of critical data in the cloud for decision makers at all kinds of levels of water management, and also donors who might want to invest in irrigation infrastructure to know how farmers are using the water, how different decision making around irrigation lead to different yields and different profits. So we basically have those two prongs, the agricultural innovation platform and the soil monitoring tools. Soil monitoring tools provide farmer learning around the soil moisture and nutrient management practices and decision making, leading to increased yield, which in theory will lead to increased profitability, but not necessarily. If farmers produce the wrong thing and produce too much of something, it might actually lead to further poverty if they have to throw the produce out because they can't sell it. So basically, to turn increased productivity into increased profit, you need farmers connected to the market. You need them to grow higher value crops, be better linked to markets. And to further increase yield, they need access to improved varieties and high quality of inputs. So that's basically the major errors you see in this chart. So we introduced what we call the Agricultural Innovation Platform, which is a forum where we collect all the stakeholders together that have anything to do with that irrigation scheme, from government departments to private industry, to extension officers, to NGOs, to donors and other things. So they go through a status quo and visioning exercise. How do we achieve the vision? What are the barriers? And importantly, this forum means that this forum, which are all the stakeholders, combined identify the barriers. Most of these barriers were known to somebody in that room, but the barriers and the impact were not shared. And it was not shared knowledge that everybody knows that this is a problem. And that's a very important function of this forum, that both barriers, problems, and their impact on farmers' livelihood becomes shared knowledge and thereby shared responsibility. And then who can implement the actions? And clearly poor water management was one of them, and tools were the identified solutions. And clearly market access, both to output and to buy quality input, was a major barrier to profitability and productivity as well. So we introduced two different smart tools. We have what we call a wetting front detector, which collects water that penetrates through the soil profile, both in the top of the root zone and the bottom of the root zone. Water can be extracted from the bottom of that funnel, and it can be analyzed for nutrients and salinity. So it shows the farmers how far the water have penetrated through the root zones, and it indicates whether there are soil present in the root zones or whether the nutrients have been percolated through the soil profile and not any longer available to the plant. This is the second tool, which is called a chameleon. It's connected to 3 sensors that are buried in the ground at 3 different depths. A cable comes up through the ground, and each scheme have 2 of these monitoring devices that are Wi-Fi enabled and send the readings directly up to the cloud or to a mobile phone if you are outside the reach of the internet. This tool will show the wetness of the soil at each of the 3 levels. So there's a little LED light that shows either blue, green, or red for each soil depth. And red means it's probably too dry, green, so it's bloody good, blue, that is very wet, probably too wet, and leaching probably takes place. This woman in Tanzania called them my eyes in the ground. She can now actually see with her eyes if the soil is wet or you need to irrigate. So that's a very combining the 2 implements has been very critical. Observing that all 3 levels are blue, with observing that the bottom funnel in the wetting front detector shows that all the nutrients is at the bottom of the root zones, provides immediate learning and observations to the farmers. And they immediately, within a few months, start reducing their irrigation by more than half. And at the same time, they observe that the yields increase more than double because the nutrients are now available for the farmers. The AIP also provides then a number of other institutions that helps farmers to understand what is going on. So here is a group of farmers in a focus group with our postdoc fellow over here from Nigeria and discussing what is their learning. They also had workshop to train farmers in how to produce gross margins so they can do better crop selection. They organized together with the input suppliers test plots to demonstrate the tools and to demonstrate the use of input. The AIP organized soil tests to better understand the fertilizer need and introduced high-value crop. And importantly, the AIP also, through its members, connected farmers to better output and input markets. It helps to resolve conflicts over a water bill, and particularly in Zimbabwe. And they got the cropping calendar and the fixed water scheduling abandoned, which were two major elements in reducing productivity in Zimbabwe. So at the end, the director of irrigation, Harare, actually said, abandon the cropping calendar. And the irrigation management committee said, we will stop the fixed scheduling. So these are major monumental changes in the way farmers can access and manage their water. So basically we have seen two loops of learning and economic development. We see learning from the tools, reducing the labor input into irrigation, which reduces water use, which makes more water available to downstream users, which reduces conflict. Some of that labor is invested into other income-generating activities or into more weeding. More weeding made that there's more nutrients and soil moisture available for the plants, which increases the nutrient pools and further increases yield. So we see there's those two loops of learning and self-generating economic development and improvement for farmers. So basically these tools, as I said, are connected to the cloud. And all the farmers from around Africa, and there's also farmers in India and Pakistan that are connected to the system, are all up in the clouds and can be used. They can be downloaded by the farmers. They can see their readings as color charts. But also others, such as international organizations, national irrigation agencies, district and province level extension officers can access the data and see how different farmers perform. At the end of each irrigation season, the farmers meet and they compute their gross margin and yields, and they discuss how they should change their water and nutrients management for the coming season. And these yield data and gross margin data also goes into the cloud. So this potentially can increase the first large-scale database of farmers from around the world that institutions of FAO can use to get real yield data, not estimated yield data, but real yield data from in-time field observations. So basically, our project have shown that cheap and easy to use soil moisture and nutrients measuring devices and the AIP in combination can increase farmer learning and have a number of influences of improving.
Lost you.
Can't hear you. Henning, can you connect your microphone there? Henning, are you with us? Henning, I can't hear you. Your microphone is unconnected or something. Can't. Henning, work with me. All right, well, I think in the absence of being able to hear Henning, and he was, I think, about finished up with his presentation, so we can just go to the question, the poll question, and I remind everyone to quickly get their audience questions in. We have about 20 minutes left, so we're going to get to as many of these audience questions as possible, and see how we can do that. So the poll question is, what is the first step for making smart water management a smarter idea? So I'm going to pop this up for 1 or 2 minutes and let everyone in the audience respond. So just click the answer that you think is most appropriate. There we go. The poll is open. So go ahead and respond. What is the first step for making smart water management smarter? Improved funding, additional political support, addressing values, or designing long-term frameworks. Go ahead and let's see what kind of responses we can get here. I'm always impressed how quickly people vote. I think it's good. You know, don't need to split hairs too much, but I'm impressed that already 60% of you have voted in less than a minute. So go ahead and think this through, and go ahead and we can leave it open for another few seconds. What is the first step? Looks like one is clearly in the lead. I won't tell you which. I'm not sure if you can see on your side, but I'm curious to see how everyone feels here. The first step in making smart water management smarter. All right, I'll go ahead and close the poll here on the assumption that 75%, 80% now. I think that's a pretty scientific, pretty good 86% of the panel people who are watching have responded. That's a pretty good response rate. And with 56%, designing long-term frameworks is the winner. So that's interesting. I think that's some interesting results, and with about even results, improving political support and addressing values. Probably should say something about addressing different values. Something like that might be helpful. But those two came in second and third respectively, and then additional funding with only 6%. People feel like funding's fine. So does anyone on the panel have some feedback or thoughts about the poll results?
Well, I think it's really interesting, and I guess I support that that result, because the long-term framework can feed into bringing on politicians. It can help define the long-term needs, and vision exercise to also include various values is kind of incorporated into that long-term, or can be incorporated into that long-term planning. So I agree with the viewers.
All right, that's good to hear. Anyone else on the panel have some thoughts about the results? All right, well, we can go to audience questions. We have a couple of them, and I remind the audience members to go ahead and continue to add in, pose your questions. I'll try to get to them. First question.
By the way, Scott, how can I look at the questions posed by the audience? Or
I have them on my side, and I can just read them to you as we.
Okay,
sometimes I kind of combine questions and massage them a little bit.
Okay, got it.
Admittedly, it's not always exactly as they pose. The first question comes from, I believe, a member of our task force, Sampat Pankajumar. who says that there is a need to have integrated water resource management software working in real time with field sensors. His case studies have been published in the Smart Water Management Reporting Notes. And how do you map different hardwares, and how does the hardware and the technical side feed into the issues of integrating that into the political and stakeholder community side? So does anyone have any thoughts about sort of this interface between different hardwares, different collection software, and different ways of collecting data? And then on the, which is kind of the hard side, the data-driven side, and then the community soft side. Any thoughts about sort of bridging those gaps?
Well, I can start, I guess.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
So I think it's actually the reverse, where first of all you have to know what is the purpose of the system, what is the data that you need for the decisions that you're trying to make, and you design it that way. So it's mapping hardware into a system design, and sometimes you know, the hardware is fixed and the software ends up changing, where say you link in additional users, or you collect data on a more frequent or less frequent basis. And once you have that core system, then you can start saying, well, who else do we need to provide this data to? How can we make it public? It really depends on the system, though, because in some cases you don't need to make the data public, or you don't want to make the data public. You're not bringing in users. So it really depends on the core needs of the system. What do you need the smart water system to do? And you design it from there.
Okay. Does anyone else have some input on sort of bridging the gap between the data and the people? Go ahead, Jim. I think you're.
Yeah,
Professor
I don't see Henning here, but I just point that that's actually, I think, a central point of his case study in Africa, is that the technology and the social network that grew out of it were intimately related. It's not a matter of, you know, kind of one or the other. They kind of developed in harmony with each other, as I understand it.
No, I just got an email from Henning saying he was inadvertently disconnected, and so it's unfortunate he's unable to jump in on this question, because this is tailor made for him. But maybe he can follow up on social media. Well, maybe we can jump on to the next question and look at how does anyone have thoughts, or from maybe from the work you've been doing? I know that it doesn't necessarily match with everybody, but how can smart water management be used to address drought management? Has anyone's research kind of touched on these issues, perhaps? Don't everyone answer at once.
Well, it is unfortunate that Henning isn't online, because you know, that technology, being able to understand how dry your soil is, for example, so that you don't end up irrigating if your crop has sufficient water. Droughts are inherently problematic, because it's much more difficult to predict when they're going to end. You know, unlike a flood, where we have the technology and the modeling to understand when the peak is, they can be devastating, but at least we have some idea when they're going to end. Whereas a drought can go on, you know, for years, and in some regions now even decades. So you know, as part of what I was mentioning is smart water technologies aren't going to create additional water sources. What they can do is help allocate the water that we do have, help provide information to users about how much water is or is not available. But droughts are certainly, in my opinion, I think the most difficult environmental condition to address just by their nature.
Well, I think that we have Professor Henning has, Professor Bjornlund has trying to join us here again, so maybe he can weigh in on this if he's able to get his microphone and, well, we don't need to hear his microphone, but if he can get his camera working as well, it'll be fine. You know, one of the things I've been thinking about as a kind of a question is, from your research and your work, you know, I mean, when we're talking about questions around technologies and developing and building sensors, I mean, these are all extremely high level and rather technically complicated ways to address problems. But when we also talk about how to address a lot of water governance issues, it comes from community. It's very at the neighborhood level, the personal level. It's not from the highly abstracted, more complicated technical level, which, you know, talking about big corporations, we're talking about government involvement. Where do you see as being maybe some of the key ways that neighborhoods and individuals and smaller communities can be pushing and driving towards improved access to smart water management? I think this came up in a couple of different presentations, so feel free to kind of draw from what you already spoke about. But does anyone have some thoughts on that? How can smaller governance and scales be used to drive the adoption of smart water management?
Well, if I could start at least, I think in some cases, such as I think as Professor Lee mentioned, there's concern among consumers about the quality of the water that comes through their taps, and if a way could be provided to reassure consumers that their water is good to drink somehow, then that would be very empowering. And one of the case studies that we had was on the campus of a university in Mexico, where they were able, by providing information to the campus community, to get them weaned off of relying on bottled water and to start using the water that was on campus. So that's one area. But to go back to the previous question with the drought, some of the uses that were in our case studies also were very large area ones. And I think one of them was from Korea, where they are using kind of a national integrated water base to predict both floods and droughts, because Korea, with the monsoon climate, has both. And in that sense, you could try to anticipate droughts, or at least be able to manage the releases from a variety of reservoirs, because Korea also is very highly dammed. So they can try to alleviate drought by bringing together all of the various facilities that they have into one kind of general system.
Does anyone else have some input on this question?
Hi, Scott. Yeah.
Hi.
I think this is we spent almost an hour talking about smart water technology, yeah, and I think we have to be very clear in regard to the meaning of smart. Okay, I mean, so you have the dictionary definition. I think that's I think a lot of the discussion centered around this idea of being cleverer, okay, doing it in a smarter way. But if that's the case, then it's somewhat could be misguided, okay? When we talk about smart water technology, I think smart technology referred to this IBM definition, how smart, okay, as an acronym was developed in the first place, is self-monitoring analysis reporting technology. Yeah, so it's not a technology that we can use for protection, right? It's a technology that will help us basically monitor the situation in any kind of situation, okay, and generating real-time data so that we can make better decisions. But it's not going to help us make decisions. It's going to generate data for decision makers to make better decisions. Okay, the data was not made available earlier. Yeah, and so I have to be very clear. Okay, that's a understanding the exact meaning of smart water technology. Then we know that there are questions that smart water technology can help us answer, and definitely there are certain questions that smart water technology is not designed to help us answer certain questions. Yeah, I just want to make that point clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is that people mix up the meaning of as clever, as smart as a specific type of technology.
Professor Trudeau, did you want to weigh in on this? Dr. Trudeau?
Well, I agree with what Professor Lee just said. Just because you have information doesn't mean that it's de facto going to make you smart. But in terms of just this, the question about how to bring these technologies into communities and how it's being diffused, there's some interesting work being done. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has a Rethink the Toilet challenge. And the municipal systems I talked about were these large centralized, 100-year-old systems. But in developing countries, they have the Gates Foundation has a challenge to create sanitation facilities that don't require external power, recycle nutrients, reuse the water, and it is available because of the monitoring technology. So these systems have to operate on a certain number of cents per use, so it to be affordable. And the whole thing is enabled by technology that can be monitored by the operator's phone. Basically, it sends a signal to the phone. If something goes off with a sensor or something's wrong with one of these systems, the operator can go. So, the technology is enabling systems management on multiple scales. So not just the large infrastructure pieces, but also because of the way the technology can be diffused through the cloud and accessed on phones, it just makes it much more accessible and cost effective, even where there isn't that kind of infrastructure right now. Sanitation, for example, infrastructure right now.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one last question. First of all, to address, and this comes up often, I probably should have mentioned earlier, we are going to have all the presentations. The PowerPoints will be online, as well as a video of this presentation. So everyone who's asked that, that'll be addressed. Just give us a few days to get everything put online. But maybe the one last question that we have from the audience and people can help. The question is what are the difference, in looking at the difference between desalination and remediation of polluted freshwater, how can smart water management be used to sort of make decisions about which of those two is best? Or I think the question could really be used as, how can smart water management be used to make policy choices between competing policy choices? How can smart water management be fed into making that the best choice possible between two competing options or three competing options? Yep.
Oh, I think one thing is we have to go back, as Professor Lee mentioned, as to what we're talking about with what we mean by smart. And smart generally involves things like real-time monitoring and applied to decision making. I don't think that real-time monitoring is the way that you can make these more macro decisions between whether to go desal or to go recycled. That really has to be part of the long-term planning that's independent of and that smart water management would fit within.
Does anyone else want to jump in? Make sure you take yourself off mute, but please feel free to answer the question.
Yes, Scott, let me add to what Professor Nickum just said. I mean, yeah, and I think we already made a point earlier at the beginning of the discussion, and that is technology will have to be policy driven, and technology does not help us make policy decisions, and particularly questions of prioritizing and also question of trade-off. I mean, trade-off decisions are difficult political decisions. Now, data. But there's a saying that you only measure what you care about, okay? So now, given the nature of your question, right, then what we can ask is that what kind of data is needed to help make that decision, okay? Whether or not to go for the salt, okay? Given that if there's a more like a affordable choice, I mean, an affordable alternative, okay? And if you go back to the definition of smart water technology as a self-monitoring system, then you see a limit to what smart technology can help us make that choice. Okay, because we are talking about the entire water system. Okay, looking into the next like 10, 20 years, and whether or not desal is an option that will help address, okay, this long-term water need of a community, of a city. And I do not see, yeah. Yes, I'll stop here. Henning.
I'm back again. I'm not sure when I dropped out. I just want to reinforce Frederick's comments that it's important that the head is wagging the tail and not the tail is wagging the head, meaning that there's no reason to invest in smart technology just to be smart. It has to serve a purpose, and only if it serves a purpose will people adopt the technology. So giving the farmer example, since the farmers quickly experienced that they increased their profit, they were very quick to adopt the tools and to use the tools. And as a result, good data is being collected in the cloud. The moment these tools don't work, or farmers do not experience that they improve their livelihood, they will be destroyed, they will not be used. And we used access to real-time and good data. So that's why the institutions are so critical. I'm not sure if it dropped out again. Maybe I did.
Just a little fuzzy there, but
this is all this about modern technology. I'm sitting in a rural area in Australia on a satellite link.
thank you for joining us all the same. Professor Trudeau, I think we're just, Dr. Trudeau, I think we're just at the end of the webinar. So if you wanted to jump in on this question, please feel free.
Well, just I agree with everything that has been said. You know, it's a matter of values also. Looking at, you know, desalination has some environmental consequences. You know, where do you put all that salt? Do you really need the water in the first place? You know, there's a lot of questions before you start. And like Professor Lee said, what information do you need to make those decisions and inform you know, whatever set of values that that community or jurisdiction has behind the decisions that they're going to make.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone on my panel for joining us here today. I'd like to give a big thank you to Professor James Nickum, Editor-in-Chief of Water International, Dr. Mary Trudeau, the IWRA Water Security Project Officer, Professor Frederick Lee, the Executive Director of the Center for Water Technology and Policy at Hong Kong University, and Professor Henning Bjornlund, Professor in Water Policy Management and an IWRA board member. Just remind everybody that some of the panel and IWRA is all on Twitter. So go ahead and look us all up and follow us if you are interested and engage on social media there. Further, if the presentations left you interested in learning more, go ahead and check out our LinkedIn webpage in a few days, and we'll be able to continue the discussion and follow up there. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have all the PDFs of the presentations as well as a recording of this webinar posted on our webpage, www.iwra.org. So in a few days, give us a few days, and we will have it all there. So if you want to come back and relive the best moments or to use this in your research, please feel free. I know we'd all be thrilled if you would cite the task force report in all of your research, give us some citations there, and make sure that you have an opportunity to go to the IWRA webpage and participate in the question of the year. So I think it's in Professor James Nickum's presentation. You can see that, or it's at on our webpage, www.iwra.org. And of course, you can also go and look at our flagship presentation, our flagship publication, Water International. We're publishing several issues a year, so go ahead and look us up there and go ahead and enjoy the articles, some of which are made free and open access, and others which you need to access as being a member or through your university. So I hope everyone found the insights provided by the panel during the event really insightful. It gave me some material to think about during my writing and research in the next couple of weeks. So I hope it's working well for you as well. Just to remind you, the webinar is brought to you by the International Water Resources Association. We're an over 40-year-old nonprofit, non-governmental educational organization. We focus on bridging disciplines and geographies and connecting professionals, students, individuals, corporations, institutions, everyone who's concerned with the sustainable use of the world's water resources. So if you're interested in learning more about the association or becoming a member, which would be great, please go to www.iwra.org. So on behalf of the whole IWRA office, we all appreciate you. Thank you for joining us with the webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Nice seeing you guys.
Yeah.
Just out of interest,
Thanks,
how much of my
Thanks, everybody.
presentation actually came through?
Yeah,